He was the heart of Heartland. Ty Borden, the young man who changed his life, found love, and built a family on the ranch, was more than just a character. He was part of the family for millions of fans around the world. So when he suddenly died, in the first episode of season 14, fans were left in shock. Many cried, many were angry. And most of all, everyone asked one question: why? Why did Graham Wardle, the actor who played Ty, decide to leave a show he had been a part of for over a decade? Ty Borden wasn't supposed to be a hero when he first rode into Heartland. He was a troubled teenager, sent to the ranch as part of a probation deal. He had a difficult past, a rough attitude, and not much direction in life. But Heartland gave him something he had never truly had before: stability, kindness, and people who believed in him. Slowly, that changed everything. Fans watched him grow from a lost boy into a strong, compassionate man. As the seasons went on, Ty worked hard to prove himself. He became close with Amy Fleming, the main character, and what started as an awkward friendship turned into one of television's most beloved romances. Ty and Amy's love story became the emotional core of Heartland. Their connection felt real, full of little moments, quiet talks in the barn, horse rides under the sun, and looks that said more than words ever could. Ty didn't just grow in love, he grew as a person. He became a vet, not just for a career, but because he found a purpose in helping animals. He faced dangers, fought through pain, and always returned stronger. He wasn't perfect. He made mistakes just like anyone else. But that's what made him relatable. He was trying, he was learning, and he never gave up. In later seasons, Ty and Amy got married. It wasn't flashy or full of drama. It was honest and simple, just like their relationship. Then came their daughter Lindy. Becoming a father changed Ty once again, and he was careful, protective, and full of love. Fans saw a full journey, a young man broken by the world, becoming a man who could build a better one for his family. Ty's story was about healing, about second chances, about growing up without losing your heart. That's why his death hit so hard. He wasn't just a character. He was someone viewers had grown up with, someone who felt like a friend. His absence wasn't just another plot twist. It felt like losing someone real. And the question remains, if Ty had so much left to live for, why was his journey suddenly brought to an end? Why did Graham Wardle walk away from the role that defined his career? In the next section, we'll look at the moment everything changed, the episode that shocked fans, and how it was written to say goodbye to a character so many loved. Asterisk, it happened fast. Too fast. 1 minute, Ty was standing beside Amy, smiling. After saving a wild horse, the next, he collapsed. No warning, no time to say goodbye. Just silence, confusion, and the sound of hearts breaking on couches all around the world. That moment in the season 14 premiere didn't just mark the end of an episode, it ended an era for many fans. It didn't feel real at first. Some thought it might be a dream sequence. Others hoped he would wake up in the hospital. But the truth settled in quickly. Ty Borden was gone. He had died from a complication caused by a gunshot wound he got at the end of season 13. The doctors had saved him at the time. He had walked away. He had laughed. He had held Amy's hand. And then, just like that, it was over. It wasn't the kind of dramatic, slow farewell most shows give to major characters. There were no last words, no chance for a farewell speech, no warning signs. That choice was on purpose. It reflected how death often comes in real life, suddenly, unexpectedly, and unfairly. But it also left fans shaken. The quietness of the scene made it feel even more painful. 1 second he was there, the next he wasn't. And that's exactly how Amy felt too. In the scenes that followed, we didn't just watch Ty die, we watched Amy fall apart. Her voice cracked. Her eyes looked empty. She walked through their home like a ghost. The baby, the ranch, the horses, none of it could fill the hole left behind. This wasn't just a character reacting. This was a deep, raw portrait of grief. For many viewers, Amy's sadness was their own. The show didn't rush to move on. It let the grief breathe. There were long silences, quiet walks, empty spaces at the dinner table. And through that silence, the reality settled in. Heartland had changed forever. What made the moment even harder was the fact that Ty had seemed okay. He was alive at the end of season 13. He had survived the shooting. Fans had spent months waiting for new episodes, excited to see him continue his life with Amy and Lindy. But instead, the season opened with his death, and the emotional whiplash was real. Social media lit up within minutes. Fans around the world shared their shock. Some were devastated, others were angry. A few even said they couldn't watch the show anymore. The writers had taken a bold risk, and not everyone was ready for it. But behind that decision was something personal. It wasn't just a choice by the writers. It was something deeper, something that started with Graham Wardle himself. Asterisk for weeks after Ty's death aired. Silence filled the space where answers should have been. Fans searched interviews, watched cast updates, and refreshed social media, hoping to understand why such a beloved character was taken away so suddenly. And then quietly, Graham Wardle spoke. Not in a flashy headline or dramatic press release, but in his own calm voice, on his own terms. The man behind Ty Borden finally opened up. Graham didn't hide behind mystery. He was honest, in an interview and later on his own podcast. He explained something most fans weren't ready to hear. He had chosen to leave Heartland after 14 years of playing Ty. He felt it was time to move on. Not because of drama, not because of conflict, but because he felt called to grow in a different direction. He said he had thought about the decision for a long time, years. This wasn't sudden for him, even if it felt sudden for the audience. Deep inside, Graham had felt a shift. He described it as a quiet voice, a feeling that something was ending. He loved the show, he loved the character, and he cared deeply for the fans. But he couldn't ignore that feeling anymore. For him, staying would have been easier. The show was successful. The cast was family. The audience was loyal. But Graham believed in listening to life when it whispers, not just when it shouts. Said he didn't want to stay just because it was comfortable. He wanted to take a leap and find out who he was beyond Ty Borden. He also spoke with deep respect for the fans. He knew how much Ty meant to them. He understood their sadness, their frustration, even their anger. That's why the decision was so hard. But he hoped that, in time, people would see it as a natural part of life. Sometimes the stories we love the most are the ones that teach us how to say goodbye. Graham didn't want Ty to just disappear. He worked closely with the writers to make sure the exit felt meaningful. It wasn't about shock, it wasn't about drama, it was about showing something honest. How grief changes everything, how loss can shape the future, and how love doesn't. And just because someone's gone, he said he hoped Ty's death would open up new stories for Amy, for Lindy, and for the other characters. That it would let the show explore healing in a real, respectful way. It wasn't just an end. It was a new beginning. Still, the pain for viewers was real. Knowing the reason helped, but it didn't erase the grief. Fans had watched Ty grow up. Now they had to let go. Now for many, the question became, what now? How would the show move forward without him? What would Graham do next, now that he had stepped away from the role that made him famous? Asterisk, long before Ty Borden took his final breath on screen, Graham Wardle had already begun a quiet journey behind the scenes. Not a journey of fame or career moves, but of purpose. Something deeper, something personal. Because for Graham, walking away from Heartland wasn't just about leaving a role. It was about listening to life calling him somewhere else, while most actors chase the next big role. Graham did something unexpected. He stepped back. He paused. He looked inward. In his own words, he felt drawn to explore the bigger questions. Who? Am I outside of Ty? What am I here to create? What stories do I want to tell now? Fans who followed him closely started to notice the signs. He launched a podcast called Time Has Come, a title that speaks volumes. In it, Graham shares thoughts about personal growth, spiritual discovery, and the courage it takes to follow your heart even when it's scary. It became clear this wasn't a man running from something. He was running towards something: truth, freedom, and maybe even peace. Graham believes stories have power, but only when they're true to life. And in life, people grow apart, people change. Sometimes we have to let go of something good to step into something unknown. That's what he did with Ty. He knew the character had reached a natural point of closure. Ty had grown, healed, found love, become a father. His story, in a way, was complete. Graham didn't want to overstay just for the sake of being safe. Said if he stayed too long, he might end up delivering a performance that didn't feel alive anymore, and that he felt would be unfair. Himself, to the fans, and to Ty. He respected the character too much to play him without passion. That kind of honesty is rare. But it's also what makes Graham's decision so powerful. He also hoped his choice would inspire others. On his podcast and in interviews, he encourages people to listen to their inner voice, the one that says, "There's more out there for you." The one we often ignore because we're scared to leave what's comfortable. Heartland was safe. It was loved. But for Graham, it was no longer where his heart truly lived, and so he let go. That choice didn't just change the show, it changed him. It gave him space to grow in new directions. Writing, producing, speaking, and helping others find meaning in their own lives. He once said that Ty's death wasn't just an ending, but a symbol. Reminder that everything in life moves in cycles. And sometimes, endings are needed to create new beginnings. Asterisk, when a central character leaves a show, things often fall apart. But when Ty Borden died, Heartland did something different. It didn't rush to replace him. It didn't rewrite history, or try to fill the gap. Instead, it stood still for a moment. It let the silence speak. And in that silence, the show took a brave step, chose to grieve with the audience. Ty's absence wasn't just felt by Amy, it was felt in every corner of the ranch. There was a new stillness in the barn, a quiet at the dinner table, a heaviness. In every glance, even the horses seemed to sense it. The writers didn't pretend things were okay. They gave the characters space to fall apart, to feel lost, to learn how to live with grief instead of trying to erase it. Amy, especially, became the emotional center of that journey. We saw a different side of her, not just the strong horse whisperer, but a woman navigating life after losing her soulmate. Some days she was brave. Other days she broke down. She smiled for her daughter, but cried when no one was looking. It wasn't dramatic. It was real. It was raw. And for many fans, it mirrored their own experience with loss. But Amy wasn't. Alone, Jack, her grandfather, stepped in like a rock, grieving in his own quiet way, but always steady. Lou, Tim, Liesl, of them carried pieces of Ty's memory in their own way. The show became less about one love story and more about a community trying to heal together. The writers knew the risk. Removing a character like Ty could have broken the spirit of the show. But instead of pretending he never existed, they made him ever present. His photo stayed on the wall. His name was still spoken. Even Lindy, his daughter, began asking about her dad, creating new storylines that honored his legacy without trying to replace it. The result was something rare on TV, a slow, respectful exploration of grief. Not the kind you move on from after one episode, but the kind that stays, shifts, and teaches. Fans who stuck with the show said it helped them process their own losses. They cried with Amy. They remembered with Jack. And slowly, they began to heal too. Heartland didn't stop being Heartland. It just became a quieter, wiser version of itself. Ty's death wasn't just a plot twist. It became a turning point. It allowed the show to grow, to deepen, and to speak to something bigger than romance or ranch life. It spoke to the reality that love and loss go hand in hand, in that sometimes the hardest goodbyes shape the strongest stories. Asterisk, when the camera stopped rolling and the ranch faded into memory. Graham Wardle didn't race toward Hollywood or line up his next big role. He didn't chase the spotlight. Instead, he stepped into something quieter, something more personal. Away from scripts and sets, Graham began building a new kind of story, one that didn't need a camera to matter. At first, fans were curious. What do you do after walking away from a character as beloved as Ty Borden? Where do you go when you've been part of a show for nearly half your life? For Graham, the answer wasn't a physical place. it was a mindset. He was no longer just playing a role. He was asking deeper questions, and he was ready to help others do the same. He launched a podcast called Time Has Come, name that carries. Wait, when you know his story. It wasn't just about leaving Heartland, it was about growing into a new purpose. On the podcast, Graham speaks openly about change, courage, healing, the uncomfortable but necessary work of letting go. He invites guests from all walks of life, artists, spiritual thinkers, survivors, to have honest conversations that rarely happen in public spaces. It's not flashy, it's not full of celebrity gossip or dramatic stories, but it's real. And for the fans who felt lost after Ty's death, it became a kind of soft landing. Graham didn't abandon them. He just started speaking to them in a new way through truth, reflection, and heart. Outside the podcast, Graham has been exploring photography, writing, and solo travel. He shared moments from the road, hikes through quiet forests, sunsets, over empty hills. There's something peaceful about the way he's choosing to live, unplugged and deeply intentional. He often talks about being present, about listening to your inner voice, about trusting the journey even when you don't know the destination. He's also continued connecting with fans in meaningful ways. Whether it's through live Q&As, thoughtful blog posts, or small gatherings, Graham hasn't closed the door on the people who supported him for so long. In fact, many say they feel closer to him now than ever before, not as Ty, but as Graham, the person behind the character. What stands out most about his life post-Heartland is the clarity in his choices. He's not trying to prove anything. He's not chasing fame. He's living with purpose. And that's what makes his story so powerful. He didn't just act out a character's growth. He lived it. He became it. And now he's using that experience to guide others through their own seasons of change. Ty Borden is gone. But somehow, he never really left. He still lives in the eyes of Amy when she looks at Lindy. He echoes in the wind over the fields of Heartland. His old jacket still hangs in the barn. His memory rides with every horse galloping across that familiar land. Even in silence, Ty's presence is everywhere, because some characters are more than fiction. They become part of us. For fans around the world, Ty was more than just a character. It was a symbol of change, redemption, and love. He showed what it looks like to grow from a broken past into a hopeful future. He showed that healing is messy but possible. And most of all, he showed how real love can shape you into someone better. That's the legacy Graham Wardle helped create. It's one that still matters long after the final goodbye. Graham didn't just walk away from Heartland. He walked into something deeper. His journey reminds us that endings don't have to be failures. Sometimes, they're the most honest step we can take. When Graham felt that Ty's story had reached its end, he listened. He stepped away with grace. And in doing so, he gave the story space to breathe, to change, to grow in a new direction. Fans didn't lose Ty because of ratings or drama. They lost him because the actor who brought him to life had the courage to move forward. And while that hurt, there's something incredibly human about it. We all face moments when we have to let go of something good in order to discover what's next. Graham just lived that truth out loud today. Heartland continues. Amy still finds strength. The ranch still brings people together. And the stories keep unfolding. But Ty's story will always be a part of the foundation. The moments he shared, the struggles, the love, the growth will never be forgotten. They live on in reruns, in fan art, in favorite quotes, and in the quiet tears of viewers who still miss him. And as for Graham Wardle, he's still telling stories. It might not look like scenes from a script or dramatic lines on camera, but they're real. They matter. Whether it's through his podcast, his writing, or just the way he chooses to live. He's reminding us all that change is okay, that endings can be beginnings, and that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is listen to that quiet voice inside that says it's time. So when we think of Ty, let's not just remember the end. Let's remember the full ride. It's the boy who became a man, the pain that turned into peace, and the actor who gave us all of that then chose to walk away. Not out of fear, but out of trust in the road ahead. Ty Borden may be gone from the screen, but in the hearts of millions, he rides on.